Hello YouTube. Now the other day my neighbour noticed we had a bread maker and asked me if it was worth the effort of making your own bread. So today I'm going to be showing you how I make my simple white loaf using the Cookworks EHS15AP-P Bread Machine. We've owned it for about a year now and it's been a good machine. So I'll show you what the machine looks like and what you get with it, and then go through the steps of how you make this simple white loaf. Okay, so a quick look at the machine. There we have the old Cookworks there. On the top you've got your control buttons for your different breads or whatever recipes you can do in the machine. And inside you've got your bread bin and your paddle there in the bottom. And then also that comes with it is an instruction manual that contains some recipes. You also get a measuring spoon. One end you've got tablespoon measurement and the other end you've got teaspoon. They're marked off in halves. And then you get your measuring cup, which is marked off in cups and millilitres and fluid ounces. For the recipe I'm going to be doing today, I use cups measurements. Now, one of the things we'll go back to is the paddle. Now, this is the most important part of the machine basically. If you forget to put that in, then you've basically wasted all your ingredients because you're not going to get a loaf. So just bear that in mind. Always put the paddle in first. Another thing that's quite important, this little measuring spoon, as I said before, we've got teaspoons on one end, tablespoon on the other end. Do not get those mixed up, because obviously the results are not going to be what you'd expect. You do not want to be putting a tablespoonful of salt when it should have been a teaspoonful of salt. The sugar isn't so bad, but the salt, no. You don't want to make that mistake. So let's get some ingredients together. Right, so the first things that are going to go in are a cup of warm water, a tablespoon of sugar and 1 sachet of yeast, which is 7 grams. They'll need to be left for approximately 10 minutes while the yeast dissolves and froths up, or foams up as we should say, and then we can add our other ingredients. So let's get those in first. Okay, so making sure that our paddle is in the machine, that's the most important thing. It's in. We now add our warm water, followed by the sugar, and then we'll sprinkle the yeast on top. Something like that. And now basically we're going to leave that for around about 10 minutes to foam up. Right, so I've already weighed out the next lot of ingredients. which is our strong white flour at 456 grams. Now I weigh out into a spare bag to avoid washing the bowl out for the scales, if I'm honest. Just a little tip there. Quarter cup of olive oil and 1 teaspoonful of table salt. Now do not get this confused, I can't emphasise this enough. Teaspoon, tablespoon, this is what you want for salt. Otherwise your bread's going to taste like, well, it's not going to be edible. So let's get them in the machine and get this loaf going. So as you can see, our yeast has nicely foamed up. So in goes the olive oil. Now the next thing to go in is our flour. Followed by a teaspoon of salt. Now it's important that the salt does not come into contact with the yeast. So I always make a little hole there and dump it in like that. We then close our lid and then we get to the control part and select the size of loaf and the colour that we want. Right, so the first thing we're going to want to do is switch the machine on. So looking at the menu, we're going to do a quick loaf, which is number 4. So we press the menu button till the 4 appears there. We're doing a medium coloured loaf, so the arrow is pointing to medium. It's a large loaf, which is 1.5 pounds, and the time is 1 hour and 58 minutes. And all we need to do now is press the start button. And there she goes. And there she is, mixing away. Right, so we'll close that up and let it get on with it and come back in about 1 hour and 58 minutes time. Okay, so as you can see, the machine is now finished and the bread is ready to be taken out. Now the other thing that needs to be done is retrieve the paddle from the bottom of the loaf. Now there's a hoop normally supplied with the bread maker for this purpose, but for some reason ours didn't get shipped with one, so we use a crochet needle for the purpose. So there you have it, my simple white loaf. There are other recipes you could try which are more complex than this, but for me this works, and I'm not really that ambitious, to be truthful. So, is it worth it? Well, yeah. Firstly, you know what you're eating, and it only costs round about, I would say, somewhere between 60 and 70p to produce. So it's quite economical. Can you make a mess of it? Well, yeah, you can. You could quite easily get the salt and the sugar mixed up, or even forget to put the paddle in the bread bin before you start. But other than that, as long as you keep to a recipe you know works well, then each loaf should be quite consistent. And I do recommend having a go. Anyway, this is only my opinion. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.